Before we introduce Jacob, I want to give you a little bit of back history. Jacob is one of the Lost Boys of Sudan. Before he gives his story, I want to give you a little bit of background information so you can fully understand the experience. In 1987, a civil war drove an estimated 20,000 young boys from their families and villages in southern Sudan. Pursued by hostile forces, these boys walked 1,000 miles through lion and crocodile country, eating mud to starve off thirst and hunger until they found refuge in Ethiopia. Shortly after their arrival, a civil war in that country forced them to begin walking again, this time to Kenya, where they settled in the United Nations refugee camp called Kakuma. Over half of the boys that initially began their journey died, and the survivors of this tragic exodus became known to the world as the Lost Boys of South Sudan. In 2000, countries around the world began welcoming the Lost Boys of Sudan where they resettled. Our next speaker is one of those Lost Boys.
I want to just briefly take a quick statistics. Raise your hand if you ever heard of the Lost Boys of Sudan. Good, so 90%. Also, raise your hand if you are a college student. 80%. Okay. The reason I say this is the Lost Boys story could go a long, long way. And there are so many ways that I could tell that story. And I don't want to keep you here. We have time limited. So one thing before I go into my speech that I want you to picture this is that what we as the Lost Boy went through, I would never wish anybody ever go through, because when I look at myself, I have shoes. I'm not naked. I'm not walking barefoot, and it has been estimated that we walk over 2,000 miles. I think we could, from Florida to maybe San Antonio, Texas. I'm making an estimate. That's a lot of miles. And when I was coming to speak to you, I was like, wow, where should I begin? Those people who knows me, they know that I'm a talkative. I'm extrovert. I love talking to people. The problem with people who are like me, it's so hard to shut them down and shut up. So I will try my best. That's why I have some notes to not go over the place. But briefly, when the Civil War started in 1983 to 2005, that's where I would term it, everything changes. Everything changes for me the day that I left one day to be in the bush, surviving, thinking that I'm coming back, to 2 days, to 8 to 9 months, to walking to a different country, Ethiopia, Kenya, and 9 years later, you are in the United States of America. So in that being said, I think I like that. That's when everything changes, not just only changing within my village, but a long way. So today, as some of you guys are most of the college students, I want to encourage you, and I titled this, to talk about education changed my life. And to just kind of give you a surrounding of my village. Growing up in South Sudan, I just want to say I want to share my story of how education has changed my life. I grew up in a little village called Mar, South Sudan. And in that village, children grew up knowing that they're either going to be married, taking care of the cattle, or possibly, when you are older, take care of your children. Our life was set. The educational system was not in my vocabulary. However, I used to watch older children would go what I call bush school. The bush school is after the first priority, make sure we take care of the cattle, especially the calf. The guys take the big cows, and the women milking the cows and bringing food. Everybody has a job. That's our typical life until everything changes with Civil War, where the society and the village was burned down. I became an orphan. Didn't have my parents anymore. I was about 6 or 7. I had to grow up very, very fast. before going into the bush and into exile to a different countries like Ethiopia and eventually here, there were some school, but it was a bush school that if your dad is rich enough to sell a lot of cows and then to send you, I didn't enjoy that because early on I had to walk many, many miles. So now I'm worried about a lot of things. How am I going to survive? My cousin was the one that would carry me about 6 or 7 years old. I'm grateful for him for carrying me. So now, when I made it to internally displaced camp called Atem, it's within internally displaced meaning it's within South Sudan. Now there's a basic education, but guess what? Do you think the education is going to be a priority, or the priority is when would I will ever get the hot meal? What is my next meal tomorrow? That was what is competing. I remember those early days where we used to write our ABC on the floor. And by the way, the teachers are the king and the queen. And when you mess up, let's say you misspell a word, you get hit by knuckle like that, just to make sure you understand. Despite of you don't know, you spend 3 to 4 more days without eating, we still go to school. Although it was difficult, some of my lost boys has coined the term called education is our mothers and our fathers. And to be honest, I was too young. I didn't understand what that means, as I will experience later. It was ingrained in us that you, the lost boys, you are the next doctor. You are this. But then me thinking like, yeah, before I become a next doctor, it would be nice to have food and eat, right? And to be honest with you guys, when I used to travel, this is one of my pet peeves. The United Nations, and it's nothing against generous people in this world helping. You know the first thing they always send? It's a book and a pencil. And I'm like, oh, great. How am I going to have that? How can you concentrate when your stomach is empty? You can't. So if you could see this, life surviving, but at the same time, I have somewhat of education starting from my village that I heard, and then internally, ABC. Then fast forward, we came to a refugee camp that I stayed for 9 years. Let me just give you a setting. In that refugee camp, you have a full ration for 14 days. And that full ration will finish within 7 days. You have 7 more days without food. I remember when I go blind temporarily at 6 p.m. because you can imagine lack of nutrition, iron deficiency. At the same time, there was a United Nations school. So I'm expected to go to school. But then I remember when I was bright. My wife wouldn't believe that. I was bright at that time. In Standard 1, which is Class 1 here. I was the first in my class out of many hundreds. I was so excited. But then I went to Class 2, and I was second and third. But then guess what? The hunger hit. That I had to go back to border of South Sudan to go get more food. So now, I'm not concentrated on my studies anymore. And then, when I come back, I see my colleague being promoted to the next level. So, speaking of my colleague, Sing Cham, instead of me in Standard 3, in the 3rd grade, and somebody in Standard 5, guess what I do? I just go join them. I said, I'm in Class 5 because I'm going by the age. Well, technically, I did not do the homework. I did not do anything. But I'm going because of the age. I don't want to be left behind. I barely understand English. And I have to, again, we are sharing with 50 people with one book. And you know the number 2 pencil? We cut in 3 different pieces. That's how we learn. In 1998, the opportunity came that they told us that you are going to the United States of America. I say, United who? I had no idea. We wrote our story in 1998. In early 2000, they start interviewing us. And I was one of the lucky few. 3,889 lost boys and lost girls came to America in 23 states. My wife is a lost girl. There's only 89 girls. And that's where the term, the word called Lost Boys. If you guys watch Peter Pan, the movie, that's how they got our name, because we took care of ourselves. And they give us the orientation in 3 days. Say, welcome to America. They taught us about snow, but how can you understand the whole United States in 3 days? I challenge you to even understand Africa in 3 days. It's hard, no pressure at all. I was 15 years old. I was sponsored by Lutheran Social Services of Michigan. When I came here, I skipped I skipped class 7, and I was in primary, which is 8th grade, in primary 8. And when I came here, guys, English was gibberish to me. And you know what's the worst part? When you are talkative, you want to express yourself, and you don't know the language. It's the worst part of my life that I never experienced. But through all of this journey, being an orphan, I remember telling my foster mom that I want to make a difference. I want to go back and help the people in Africa. But how do you help people of Africa when you couldn't even help yourself? It's through education. I remember the first time I made it to a first class. My first class was literature, Shakespeare. Be aware of Macbeth. Oh my God. The Odyssey, 1984, and the grammar. And just sitting in the classroom, it was like a deer in a headlight. Every 2 seconds, I'm raising my hand. What does that word mean? What is this? And because students didn't understand my story, they will bully me and call me, you barely speak English, go back to Africa. It was just so frustrating to the point that despite of how terrible Africa is, I wish at some point that I would go back to Africa. As a matter of fact, I proposed to go and stay with my cousin. But you know what? I challenge myself and I say, these people cannot dictate who I am. I am in control. And also in Africa, if somebody do you wrong, you punch, your cousin got you back. Well, in America, it's so simple. You punch, it's easy. We have low hall prison here. It's called juvenile delinquent. So I am faced with the decision that I have to do. So I remember saying, God, let me graduate from high school. That was just my wish, because I never thought I was just a number. I was in a foster care, a ward of the state. I was a statistic that would never finish. But when I graduated from high school, I was like, feel like top of the world. I was jumping up and down, and my friend was like, Jacob, it's just a high school diploma. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand how far we came. And I was so excited. People told me you would never make it to college. And after working hard with a lot of dedicating people working after hours, I made it to Spring Ivy University, played soccer for them. And I majored in biology because I have a huge cut here when I ran into a sharp tree when people say lion, running. And at that time, I was so malnourished where I can see my own bones. Those things stick in my head and say, God, I want to be a doctor. And when I become a doctor, I could build a clinic, and then I could treat myself. I mean, I'm having imagination. That is illegal in America. I don't think even if you're a physician, you could treat yourself. But those are the imagination that I had. But along the way, these imagination has helped me. So I didn't, when I graduated with bachelor's in biology, guess what I did? I co-founded an organization called Southern Sudan Healthcare Organization, where we built a health clinic in my village of Mar that was destroyed. We were seeing over 100 patients a day. I mean, I never thought of this. Until recently, when the Civil War was broken out, I was even there, and thankfully, our American military had to come and rescue me again for the second time. And I'm telling you all this because when I graduated, just to understand how the NGO worked, I had no idea. But I have this dream. People always doubt me, but they did not let. I did not let them get into me. I was the speaker at the commencement. A few years ago, I was invited to speak at the UNESCO, and I was in the United Nations with the First Lady. Mrs. Laura Bush. And she's sitting here, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, wow, this is the boy that's supposed to be a herdsman, looking after cattle, calf. And here I am, presenting. They were saying, how did the Lost Boy become literate? Because, again, the access, the ability that education has given me. And that's why I went and took medical college admission test, MCAT. Didn't do well, so I went back to Michigan State and got my public health. You know, God give us different calling. If I'm not going to be a doctor, I'm going to be MPH and different doctor now. I'm a PhD candidate at University of Florida. I'm telling you all this that nothing is impossible. I'm telling you all this that what these people have shared today, their story. It's our turn today, 5 of us. Each of us has a story. It doesn't need, and I'm glad you guys came to this and see different variety. I always tell people, all the sad stories doesn't have to come from Africa. All the sad stories are on our backyard. We just heard today. All these stories, whether it's shame, it's rape, whether these social issues we're dealing with, social change, whether somebody is doubting who you are. It's a matter of time. If I tell you now, we switch a seat, you have a story to tell. So the reason I like doing this type of stuff, so that we can learn. And because I need to wrap it up here, just to paraphrase a few things. That if you could take anything away, is there's a quote that I like just for the conclusion. As I mentioned before, I experienced many drastic life changes growing up, but one of the most profound change was how my attitude about the importance of education evolved. Due to the civil war between North and South Sudan, I was orphaned and deprived early on as a childhood education. I didn't know what it was like to be part of a good education system until I came to this country. One of my favorite quotes from the Lost Boy, as I said, is education is our mothers and our fathers, which emphasize the importance of education. Education has changed my life in many ways. It has given me a voice and a platform for easily communicate and build a relationship with people. It has given me the ability to lead others. I mean, I could go on and on. But I want to finish this with Nelson Mandela quote, which is said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And I believe that. This resonated with me because not only has education changed my life and my way of thinking, but also it's encouraged me to change the world by helping those who cannot speak for themselves. I hope this quote also inspires you to be bold and change the world with the knowledge you have received through your education. You have been blessed with health, living conditions, and the ability to learn as much about the world as you can. Yes, education is a long-term investment, but once you have it, you gain a sense of respect from the world, from the whole world, and the tool to make it a better place. Now, as I said, we have a few minutes to go. I'm going to stop here, but I will do, maybe this is not allowed in Story Slam, but in honor of my speakers, I want us, actually all of us except maybe him who you're taping, to get up, stand up slowly, stand up. And the reason I'm going to do this, yeah, I know you were stretching, but to hear these amazing speakers today, this is one thing I like about it so far. Each of us has a story. And like I said, let me repeat. It's always, there's always a child being shown on TV, and that child is from Africa. It's nothing against us as Africans. But every single mega city in downtown Gainesville, there are children who are suffering. So I like this international verse within us. We have a story. So let me do this. There are 4 words that I learned when I went to this training, leadership, and I tell to myself, and I think these four words will resonate with my speakers today. And those four words is, I am powerful, I overcome, I'm strong, and I'm a leader. And the reason I say, despite of all this, these amazing women today and men, they're strong. They has overcome. So I know this is uncomfortable for you, but I want you guys to close your eyes and repeat after me those four words. But also remember, what you're saying is not to Jacob, is to yourself. And I hope this is going to be louder than me. And this is part of the participation today because you've been hearing us talking. And we have a few minutes to go. So I'm going to start and say it slowly. Repeat after me. Say it. I am powerful. I am strong. I overcome. I am a leader. Are you serious? Come on, guys. Say, I am powerful. I am strong. I overcome. I am a leader. I am powerful. I am strong. I overcome. I am a leader. Yes, you are. So go change the world. Thank you, and God bless.